Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 35 of this awesome, incredible Osu Let's Play series. In the last episode, I talked about tournaments and where to find them, how to get into them, things like that. And in this episode, I want to specifically talk about Mappools. So how they're typically structured and how to go about practicing them, more in a general sense. But yes, before we get into any of that, I want to shout out, as usual, that I live stream every single day over at twitch.tv/DigitalHypno. That will be linked in the description, but if you want to hang out with me or ask me a question, watch me play this game live, anything like that, would highly recommend stopping by and saying hello. And bonus points also, if you tell me that you came from this Let's Play series, I'll be very happy to see you there. So yes, before we get into what Mappools are typically structured like, I want to show you what it usually looks like when you get a tournament announcement, basically. And none other than Yaz's Summer Cup, very good, just sample tournament, basically. It's very high quality. But this is more or less what an announcement would look like in a tournament. And so basically, Mappools so Mappool and schedules, they're typically released at the same time. And for whatever stage, blah, 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 they're linked on the tournament spreadsheet. And then ideally, the tournament links the spreadsheet in the announcement, or otherwise you would be able to find it in the links channel here. And some other information prevalent to that specific tournament. So here there's some small announcements and details for how to go about rescheduling your match if you need to. So you can pause the screen and read that if you'd like, but this is pretty much standard procedure. And then at the bottom, there's a nice friendly reminder of how many bans each player gets and the best of for the matches for that round. It's a very ideal announcement. Thank you, Yaz. And again, this is what a typical tournament spreadsheet would look like. At the bottom, here you have a bunch of tabs you can scroll through using your mouse scroll wheel or also these arrow buttons. And also, you could press, oh, you can't see it. Okay, but okay, next to the, actually, let me see if I can show this in the video. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you have this button, this hamburger menu. Click on that, and you can also go through all the tabs like this. So let's go to the Mappools tabs. This is typically what it might look like. Why is 7 nomads? Okay. Okay, so 1v1 tournaments. Okay, so let me actually. Okay, so in the last episode, I showed you a sample map pool that had a free mod pool. And if this tournament does not have one, typically 1v1s, especially I think these days, try to stay away from free mod map pools. And I'll try to touch on why, but for the most part, this is more or less what it should look like. So there's what's called a map pack download, which is where you can download all the maps at once, or you can just mouse over these and click on the link. That will take you to the map page. And also, okay, most importantly, okay, these map IDs. So click on one of these. You can copy them. So the map ID is basically like the number at the very end of the URL. And if you copy them, you can go to my song list. And that is something you can paste directly into your game search thingy. And that will take you directly to the map. So this is to make sure that you're practicing the right difficulty. Sometimes there's like multiple songs, like multiple maps of the same song, also with the same difficulty, sometimes even by the same mapper. And you need to make sure that you're practicing the right one. So this is a very good way to make sure of that. One other thing you can do is if you go to a multiplayer lobby, you can type MP space map space and then the map ID as well. That is one way to practice Mappools this is just to make sure that you have the right map selected. And if you don't have the map, then in the multiplayer lobby, it will prompt you to download the map like right there. So very convenient way, underrated way to practice Mappools. But yes, let's talk about, I guess, Mappool theory and I guess more so what you can expect to find in like a typical Mappool, because Mappools these days are sort of standardized and there's a sort of expected skill that each map in the Mappool tests. But okay, actually before I get into that, let me actually also go back to the map I was on previously. This is the first map I want to play for you guys. But I want to talk a bit about what actually, let me just play the map and get started. So the point of a Mappool, I think let's talk about that first. So obviously I think it doesn't make sense. Oh wait, why do I have hidden on? What? How did that happen? Interesting. Okay, so the whole point of a Mappool is obviously so that like players don't pick whatever random map that they have memorized and their opponent doesn't and get a free win. But I think more importantly, it's sort of the platform for, oh, okay, actually let's first establish that like the whole point of a tournament match is for the more skilled player to like, you know, express their skill dominance on their opponent. And so the map pool is supposed to be designed for the better player to like have maps like at their disposal, I guess, to like show off their skills and like strengths over their opponent. So like unideal map pool, for example, let's talk about what a map pool should not be, is like, let's say I'm better than my opponent at like streams, because I'm just the best stream player in the game, and I would want a map with streams in it, like, or like where the difficulty is mostly streams, available to me, so that I can like, you know, pick that and then crush my opponent at streams, because I'm just the best stream player in the game, and, you know, get a point that way. So I need a platform to show off my skills, right, and my strengths. And so the whole point of a map pool is to have a little bit of everything, so that no matter what your strengths are, there's probably something for you that you can try to express your strengths over your opponent. So for that reason, there's a bunch of different mod pools. So for the most part, map pools try to put like they try to test a bunch of different skills, but they also mostly test skills that are, I guess, most prevalent or common. So let's see, with that in mind, you don't see like very, very niche, like specialized skills like AR0 hidden or like AR11, which is like hard rock double time, things like that. They're very, very rare. They pretty much never show up in tournaments. Or like 300 BPM streams, stuff like that doesn't really show up usually. Okay, well, I don't want to say it's impossible, because, you know, anything is possible. But, like, admittedly, map pools are just made by like players just like you who like are entrusted with picking balanced maps that are relatively similar in difficulty as well. Obviously, like, okay, so if you're better at streams than like reading, for example, like hidden, then obviously the stream map is going to feel easier for you, hopefully, than the reading map. And if not, then obviously that's a problem with map pool balance, but that's effectively how it works. Okay, so let's try to, okay, so let me break down what you should expect in each slot of a map pool. So the typical size of a map pool these days is you have 6 Nomad maps, 3 hidden maps, 3 hard rock maps, 4 double time maps, and 3 free mods, and then 1 tiebreaker. And that is something I discussed in a bit more detail in the last episode. It's episode 34, where I talked about tournaments as a whole. So yes, definitely check that out. And also, check out my previous episode, episode 33, on ScoreV2, if you are not sure how that works, but yes. So let's just go down the list. So actually, in the OC University Discord server, which you guys should totally join, by the way, it's in the description of all my videos, but someone named Kare, who's a very experienced tournament player and also staff member, he wrote a little summary of what skill is tested in each map pool slot. So I'll just be going down that list and also sort of giving my own thoughts slash commentary slash, I guess, reasoning as to like how all those like why those skills sort of are the way that they are, like tested the way that they are. So let's see, what's the next map on the list? It's this one. Let's go. I'm gonna play this one Nomad, I think. So yeah, so the reason I'm using ScoreV2 this episode is because typically when you're practicing a map pool, you're gonna want to use ScoreV2 and no fail, because that's what your match is gonna be like as well. So let's just go Nomad, I think. Nomad. Okay. So Nomad 1, it's the first map in the pool, and okay, so actually let me talk about the Nomad pool as a whole. Yeah, okay, so actually let me talk about the mod pools as a whole. Okay. Suspense toward getting into each individual map. Anyway, so I think the more so Nomad is obviously not testing any mod at all, is where you'll find the more like raw forms of all the different skills. So like raw aim with little else tested, raw streams, you know, raw like alternating ability, or like raw speed, things like that. Or like even like there's like a slot for unconventional map, but in the Nomad pool still, which is sort of supposed to be like very raw, like with little other skills combined. For the most part, I think maps are supposed to be testing 1 or maybe 2 things maximum, so that like, let's say if I'm the better stream player in the match, and the only stream maps are also like really, really spaced and have big jump sections, that's not really a viable map for the stream map slot in the map pool, because I might just end up losing through aim, even though that map is supposed to be the one where I assert my dominance on my awesome streaming ability. So hopefully that makes sense, but Yeah, so the Nomad pool. Okay, so typically, okay, so the mod pools are each sort of specialized towards like the kinds of maps of like whatever that mod does to maps. So like double time, for example, makes it faster, like changes the BPM, I think most notably. So the double time map pool is sort of focused on testing various BPMs, and also approach rates above 10 is also something that's only found with double time. So that's where you'll see stuff like that tested. And Hard Rock, so Hard Rock makes circles smaller. So I think that's, so typically you just find like very aim-based maps in the Hard Rock pool, and also like small circle size. It's usually something smaller than 5 or 6 circle size in the Hard Rock pool, ideally. And in the hidden pool, so hidden is all about the map sort of being different to read, or sometimes trickier to read. So usually that's what's tested in the hidden pool as a whole as well. And free mod and tiebreaker I'll get into in a little bit, but let's go down the list, starting with Nomad. So Nomad 1 typically is raw aim or consistency. Actually, let me just go down this list. I don't think many of these need much explaining, but yeah, Nomad 1, raw aim consistency. Nomad 2 is raw streams, typically. Stream stamina, particularly. It usually doesn't go above like 210 BPM, like maximum. But especially in earlier stages where the difficulty is a bit easier, I think it's usually around like 180, 190, maybe 200 BPM, somewhere around there. Or actually, no, it can be lower too, depending on difficulty, but yeah, typically not higher than 200 BPM unless it's a really hard map pool. So Nomad 3 and Nomad 4 are like alternating and tech, respectively. Oh, by the way, I have separate episodes on most of these, I guess, terms. So if you're confused about any of these kinds of maps, I would suggest checking out the playlist of all the Let's Play episodes, and the titles should be able to help you out there. But yes, Nomad 3 and Nomad 4 is, one of them is always alternating and one of them is something technical. And it's, so I think this was one of the last things to get standardized as far as like what slot is what kind of map in map pools. I think these days it's pretty standardized that the third Nomad map is alternating and the fourth one is tech, but you might see it the other way around sometimes, depending on what tournament you play. So Nomad 5 is typically supposed to be something higher BPM, speed map basically. Obviously it's sometimes like on the denser side, especially because it's Nomad as opposed to double time. In the double time pool, you'll see speed maps that are a bit less dense, like higher AR, but since it's in the Nomad pool especially, I really slided broke at the end. Okay, that's cool. That's awesome. But yeah, speed. Typically there's, right, so the message that Kare wrote in OS University, which you guys should join by the way, it's pinned in the Q&A channel by the way, this is what I'm reading from. But he wrote speed, which is typically high BPM, lower spacing, and more bursty than streamy. Yeah. So there's a lot of, yeah, so it focuses more on the speed aspect rather than the stamina aspect. So that is Nomad 5, and then Nomad 6 is more gimmicky. It's, yeah, so he wrote, this one's kind of a wild card and depends on the tournament, which is pretty true. But he wrote, it's Nomad 6 is reading or gimmick or precision, something sort of unorthodox. It's usually also somewhat rhythm based, I think especially these days, but yes, that is the typical Nomad pool. If you ever see 5 Nomad maps, then usually either there's no speed map or there's no reading map, or one or the other. Some map pools are a little on the smaller side, and that is usually what ends up getting sacrificed. So yes, okay, map number 3, this episode. This one I'm going to use with hidden. I think it was a custom map actually. Yeah, so especially in the last year or two, there have been some like so mappers basically make custom maps specifically for a map pool to test a specific skill. And Elcheer is an awesome map for Toho tournament number 2. Thank you. This is in the hidden pool specifically, so to honor that, play this map with hidden. And speaking of hidden, so this map was a hidden 1 map in round of 16. And so hidden 1, okay, so actually all the 1 slots of each mod pool are usually something aim focused. So in this case, hidden aim, although it sort of tries to incorporate something on the denser side, or that like makes use of the fact that you're using hidden. So this map, if you notice, there were a couple perfect stacks, which is yeah, there's a couple of perfect stacks throughout this map. And in general, I think just something, it's usually, so either Hidden 1 or Hard Rock 1 is like unorthodox in its aim, either the angles or maybe Hidden 1 is very dense aim or something like that. But it does typically test aim or aim control in some way, Hidden 1. And then Hidden 2, okay, so I think the second slot of the pool, of each mod pool, usually focuses on like the niche that mod tests. So Hidden is all about reading, so Hidden 2 is typically the map that tests low approach rate. Yeah, actually, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. So I think some people are like, oh no, Hidden 3 is the low AR map. It really depends. These aren't 100%. These, like, it's not rules or anything. But typically, I think Hidden 2 is the one that's low AR. And that's typically AR 8, although it depends on the BPM as well. The faster the map, the denser it is, given the same AR. So sometimes you might even find like AR 8.5. You never really find AR 9, I'm pretty sure. That's very rare. It's typically AR 8. Sometimes it goes under, right? But again, standard is Hidden 2 is usually also called AR 8 Hidden. Sometimes they just call it the same thing. Like when you hear Hidden 2, you should sort of automatically think low AR Hidden or AR 8 Hidden. So that is that. So Hidden 3, so I think usually, wait, actually, let me check what he wrote. He wrote alt/tech/speed wildcard. Okay, so actually he wrote, okay, so for Hidden 3 and Hard Rock 3, he says that it's sort of wildcard. Okay, that's actually a little interesting. I think, okay, I suppose, personally, if I was making a map pool, I would probably test something streamy or like flow aim oriented in the Hidden 3, because I think Hidden is very, like, it affects flow aim for sure, and like the way that you play streams or read streams, I feel like. So I think that's probably something that I would personally test. Although, yeah, actually that's true. You could test tech or speed as well. Okay, he's actually right. You can probably test whatever, but yeah, you might find a bunch of different things. You might also find something higher BPM in the Hidden 3 pool, or Hidden 3 slot. But yes, that is a hidden pool. So Hard Rock, right, again, Hard Rock 1 is typically aim oriented. You might see something smaller circle size-ish. I mean, okay, obviously it's going to be probably CS 5.2, which is the most common circle size for Hard Rock, because circle size, the CS4 is the most common one normally, and CS4 with Hard Rock is 5.2. So hopefully I didn't lose anyone, but I think that's somewhat common knowledge if you're watching episode 35. So yes, Hard Rock 1 typically very aim oriented, and Hard Rock, okay, no, I meant Hard Rock, yeah. So I mean all the ones, right, like I said, are pretty aim oriented. But honestly, I think Hard Rock 1, if I was making a map pool, I would make Hard Rock 1 the most conventional in angles and things like that. And Nomad 1, okay, Nomad 1 is also sort of on the conventional side. Typically, Nomad 1 is seen as like the super conventional map. Actually, the first map that I played in this episode was a custom Nomad 1 map, so to give you a taste of that. And since I'm on the topic, the second map that I played was it's not a custom map, but it is pretty common Hard Rock, or Nomad 4 tech map. I think more, I guess it used to be more common a couple of years ago, but still a pretty good sample map of what tech is. And yeah, so Hard Rock 2, something usually precision, small circle size focused, as that is the main test, or like the main characteristic of Hard Rock. So yes, Hard Rock 2, something small CS usually. Hard Rock 3, so he also wrote in this little, I guess, summary of map pools, Hard Rock 3 is typically, it's also a wild card, which is kind of true. So he wrote alt/tech/speed. I think if I had to give it a label, I think Hard Rock 3 is usually something that really tests like rhythm sense and accuracy, where even if you can play the map kind of comfortably, it might be very hard to get good accuracy. Because another thing with Hard Rock is that it jumps the OD all the way up to 10. And in that sense, I think accuracy is a very, very prevalent component of Hard Rock. So that is that. Okay, so the last map. Okay, actually, let me find, oh gosh. I did not expect to take this long. Let's find a common double time. Let's just grab a map from Gold Dust, running it back. Okay, no. Oh man, okay, these maps are so hard. let's just find. Okay, so okay, this is a good map actually. Double time. This is actually a pretty common double time one. I think I've seen it before. Right, thank you, sorting by artist. Saved the episode. Yeah, so I have a couple local scores. DT. Okay, actually, personally, when I play double time, higher ARs, I switched to this skin. I think I mentioned this in my episode on skins, but yes, this skin will be linked in the description, by the way, the one that I'm about to use, but yeah, make sure my sounds are a little quieter. Yes, okay, double time. Double time 1, also somewhat on the consistency side, although you'll probably find that the BPM is usually maybe 230 to like 263, 270 maximum, I think, for double time 1. It's more supposed to be consistency test and or like aim test on higher BPM, obviously. Because double time's all about fast stuff. Although actually not entirely, and I'll get into that with double time 4, but yes, double time 2. Let's see, so DT2 is more, okay, actually, okay, so DT2, DT3, so one of them is always something like dense speed. Usually you'll find like something AR8 that's around 260 BPM, if I had to guess. It's something around there, or like 270 BPM maybe. Something fast, but also sort of on the denser side. It focuses more on tapping and sometimes finger control. Oh, actually, okay, no, that's true. Sometimes it's not actually speed. It's more like finger control focused. It might even be like 210 to 230 BPM, something like that. Double time 2, but it's more focused on finger control and like dense speed rather than necessarily like super fast. And then the other slot between DT2 and DT3, that one is more about like super high BPM, usually like 270 to sometimes even 300, I feel like. It's very bursty. Actually, no, it could be even like 270, 280 BPM. Okay, so Kali actually wrote, or the person who wrote the little thingy that I'm reading off of, he wrote that DT2 is the high BPM one and DT3 is the sort of dense speed. It really doesn't matter either way. This is one of those like Nomad 3, Nomad 4 things you might see either way. Actually, maybe it is standardized these days and I just don't know, but yeah. DT2, DT3, one of them is going to be dense speed and one of them is going to be sort of very higher BPM. And also sort of more burst oriented than stamina. And okay, actually, okay, that's true. So instead of the dense, like, so the dense speed map might also be very stamina oriented as well. That's possible. So let's keep that in mind. But typically, actually, it might also be somewhat dense, or okay, I guess I already said that, but a little gimmicky also, you might find. Although, wait, actually, okay, DT3, the dense speed map, yeah, I think that's mostly finger control, to be honest, on like a mid-range double time BPM. But yes, anyway, double time 4, okay, so this is where it gets a little interesting. So usually they put like a very old style map that's somewhat gimmicky and very rhythm oriented, I would say. I'm pretty sure for double time 4. So like awkward angles or like alternating weird stuff typically goes in double time 4. Sometimes there's no bursts at all in the double time 4 slot, but also typically, okay, so the approach rate ranges are also, I think, somewhat not necessarily standardized, but you typically have like one map that's like AR 10.3 or like around there. You might have a map that's AR 8 double time, and that's typically the dense finger control map or stamina. And I think double time 4 could really be anything. Sometimes it's like AR 7 DT, which is AR 9, or sometimes it's a lot higher AR as well. There's something very gimmicky, I think, is what DT4 is. And okay, next up is free mod. So free mod, let me find one more map to play. So free mod is characterized by basically one map is supposed, so out of the 3 maps that are in the free mod pool, one of them is very like somewhat favored towards hidden. One of them is somewhat favored towards hard rock, and then one of them is sort of in the middle. Not necessarily intentionally, like you don't want any map to be completely towards one mod or the other, but you want there to basically be some sort of challenge no matter which mod the player takes. So free mod 1, for example, is usually something dense. Like, okay, so it's aim based, right, as usual, but it's usually something that's like awkward angles, I think, usually, and also high BPM. So it's kind of dense with hidden, but it's also pretty tricky even with hard rock. That's usually what free mod 1 is, I think. And that's also what Kali wrote in this little description of Mappool slots. Fremont 2, okay, so Fremont 2 is, I think, very iconic. So you typically have something that's CS5 and AR8. And what that does, let me actually type this, so CS5 AR equals 8. Let's see if I can find something that's somewhat used. Okay, so out of 9, this is just an example. So CS5 AR8, so obviously when you use hidden, it's going to be something pretty dense. Usually it's an older type of map as well, but it doesn't have to be. And when you use hard rock, okay, so you're either getting very dense hidden or you're getting CS 6.5 hard rock. So you're basically picking your poison when it comes to the mod that you choose. So yeah, and so Kali wrote that Fremont 2 is basically a combination of hidden 2 and hard rock 2, which is pretty much true. Yeah, I think that's correct. And Fremont 3 is, I think, the real wildcard slot. So it can really just be whatever needs to be, like, whatever map needs to be there in order to balance the, like, if there's a certain kind of map that is, like, wasn't really tested in the rest of the map pool, then that is what Fremont 3 is typically for. So if there was a lack of, like, stream stamina, then you might find that in the Fremont 3 slot. Or if there was a lack of tech or, like, rhythms, weird, it can really be anything, I feel like, but yes, that is Fremont 3. And you try, obviously, to make it somewhat balanced towards, like, if you use hidden, there's a challenge for you. If you use hard rock, there's a different kind of challenge for you. And yes, that is the majority of the map pool. And then the tiebreaker, like I mentioned in the last episode, is sort of just a consistency test. It sort of tries to encompass a bunch of different skills so that the better player comes out on top. I think that's sort of the main goal of the tiebreaker. And also, obviously, it should be pretty hype because, you know, both teams are 1 point away from winning. So exciting. But yes, that is the structure of a map pool. And real quick, I want to talk about, like, practicing a map and, like, what goes into practicing for a map pool. So general advice for practicing map pool is you want to play through everything probably at least once to get familiar with each map. And then you go back to the maps that you think you can improve on by playing them more. Basically, for each map in the map pool, you want to play them and practice them and learn them until the point where you feel like playing it again is not going to teach you anything new about the map, if that makes sense. You just want to get to the point where, like, how do I word this? Like, whether or not you get a better score only depends on if you're warmed up for the match itself, basically, and not about you learning the map more or, like, figuring out the rhythms more. Like, once you get to that point for each individual map, then I would say you're pretty much done practicing. Although, if I'm being honest, usually players don't get to that point. At least, maybe I'm biased because I typically don't practice map pools that often unless I'm really trying for that tournament. But yes, anyway, bad advice, by the way. You should always practice your map pools. But anyway, especially if you're on a team tournament, don't let your teammates down. But I want to show you, okay, so this specifically is a Nomad 6 that was in Corsace 2020. Yeah, 2020. Corsace custom map for grand finals. And this is very, very rhythm dense. And I want to basically show you that when I was learning this map, I basically split it into 11 different sections. I made different practice difficulties. And if you're wondering how to make practice difficulties, I have a video on that. It'll be linked in the little card thingy in the top corner. But basically, I split the map into 11 sections. And I go to my local scores. I like, especially this one, apparently had to learn a lot. But dissecting maps like this is a very viable way. Sometimes you just have to really, like, ingrain the rhythm into you sometimes to learn a map. But okay, I'm going to play this as a sort of wrap up for the episode. But yeah, some words of precaution. Let me turn my headphones back up a little. Words of precaution for practicing map pools. Don't practice too much. I think there's sort of a point of diminishing returns when it comes to map pool practice that okay, so there is sort of fear of mind block, I guess, when it comes to map pool practice, where basically you've played a pattern so many times that you, like, don't really read it anymore. You sort of, okay, so mind block basically is like you stop reading the pattern and you start just sort of playing what you remember. That's the gist of mind block. If you're really interested in learning more about mind block, I have a section on it in OCPHD, and then also over at OC University, we did a bunch of interviews talking about the intricacies of, oh my god, I can't read, intricacies of mind block. Okay, maybe not the best map to play while talking. Okay, so something about this map in particular. So the rhythms might seem kind of random, but okay, so this is one of those gimmick maps where it helps a lot to have combo colors, because if you notice, all the gaps in rhythm are also the gaps in combo color. So yeah, I'll try to be quiet for a bit so you can notice. So honestly, this is a really creative Nomad 6 map. Very good. I think this is sort of an ideal type of Nomad 6 gimmick, rhythm based, things like that. This is not the prettiest score compared to my local scores, but you know, that's okay. Other things, so honestly, sometimes like you don't even need to practice an entire map. Like the conventional map, for example, Nomad 1, things like that. If like you can usually just play it once, and as long as you sort of get the idea, then like, okay, at a certain point, I think like the biggest takeaway from this, at a certain point of practicing a map pool, you like how do I word this? Okay, so all that matters is like you being warmed up for the match and not necessarily practicing the map pool more. Like only a small percentage of preparing for a tournament match is actually practicing the map pool, and the rest of the preparation work comes from being warmed up on the day of the match. I think that's a very important takeaway. Like don't, okay, I've never actually considered that anyone would actually do this, but just as a forewarning, very similar to pulling an all-nighter to study for an exam. Don't pull an all-nighter practicing a map pool. I don't think anyone really does that, but okay, this is why you don't talk and play rhythm maps at the same time. But anyway, yeah, don't. I think, yeah, only a small percentage of the preparation work that goes into tournament match is actually practicing the map pool. Okay, actually, it's not a small percentage. I think especially in grand finals, you really want to learn the maps and make sure you get a good understanding of. Okay, also, you don't necessarily need to be able to full combo the maps in the match. I think the whole point of practicing the map pool is to have a certain expectation of, or like confidence in knowing how you will perform in the match itself. So getting a sort of solid average score, like for me, for example, is to have a bajillion 400k scores on this map. So like if I were to go in this map in a tournament match, then I can tell my team especially, like, hey, I'm probably going to get around 400k on this map. And it's a very helpful way for people to strategize and figure out what players to put in. So at the very least, get a good idea of how you think you'll do on each map, especially if you're in a team tournament, and that will help a lot with strategies and things like that. But yes, hopefully that was helpful. This is sort of gist of how map pools are structured. Oh, I did not realize this episode is this long. Okay, this is very interesting, but there's a lot to cover. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. I think actually the best thing you can probably do is ask in the OC University Discord server, the Q&A channel, and someone will probably be able to help you. But yes, if you're watching in the future, be sure to check out my future videos because I upload these every single day. And yeah, if you have suggestions for future topics as well, let me know in the comments. Catch me on Twitch also. I know I mention it a lot, but I don't say it for nothing. I'll be very happy to see you guys there. But yeah, with that, see you guys next time.